I got a cute email today. It's a Peanuts cartoon, and Lucy is complaining to Charlie. She says, "I never get what I want for Christmas." And Charlie says, "Well, what do you want for Christmas?" And Lucy sighs and says, "Real estate." So, glad the stenographer got that. So in the spirit of avoiding Lucy's fate, David Kramer, 171 Clinton Street, and I'm here as an individual as well as board chair of the Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy. So I rarely get to say the following statement ever in life, but here goes. I come here to offer lavish praise for the status quo. We are unquestionably in an age of limited resources at the city and state levels. And if I had to personally recreate a park finance plan that didn't poach from the city's current and future revenues, I would probably arrive at a plan nearly identical to the approved EIS park plan, which I had nothing to do with. A few small development parcels at the perimeter of the park providing disproportionate revenue given their small footprint and impact on the park, revenue that will sustain the park for generations. I specify funds that don't poach from the city because that's the language of the MOU, and all the alternatives I've heard to date, from perks to takeovers of the witness buildings, are mostly unrealistic, but they're all undeniably poaching from city revenue. And by the way, as a quick rebuttal to a woman from the Park Defense Fund, I can say first of all that a lot of the commercial uses you specified are literally pennies on the dollar, drops in the bucket towards the revenue we're seeking. Specifically, you mentioned the YMCA and how if 7,000 people are paying X dollars at $7 million, I can tell you from experience, if somebody was considerate enough to build a YMCA at the park perimeter, it would be 10,000 square feet. The YMCA could barely afford $30 a square foot. That would be $300,000 in rental income for that building, and that building would barely break even, which is why the people who created the EIS financing plan went in the direction that they did. By way of introduction, I'm the father of 3 kids who have spent countless hours with them at the park over the past 12 years, starting with Fulton Ferry Park and the Main Street Playground, then the floating pool, then Piers 1 and 6, and now that I have a puppy, long walks along the entirety of the future park from Atlantic Avenue to John Street. Not for a second would I support anything that compromises the experience in the park. And when I first started exploring the park economics 5 years ago, I assumed that the governmental analysis would be riddled with inaccuracies, silly assumptions, and bad math. My background is both as a parks organizer, whose first job after college was starting People for Parks in Los Angeles, and my day job for the past 20 years, which has been in real estate. And by the way, given my advocacy at the Conservancy, I long ago recused myself from any role in the housing developments. But instead, what I discovered when I looked at the EIS plan was thorough financial analysis and reasonable assumptions in an effort to underwrite $15 million of revenue without materially impacting the park experience. The assumptions about ground rent and taxes were pretty much exactly what I would have suggested. The housing at the perimeter doesn't bother me one bit. I would have already noticed it from the several hundred people already living at 1 Brooklyn Bridge Park. They don't bother me, and in fact, to the extent that they'll help populate the park when it's cold and dreary, that's a good thing. I don't feel the good folks at 1 Brooklyn have any priority interest in the park, nor do I feel that way about the residents of 1 Main Street, negatively impacting their adjacent playgrounds. If I think about what type of change truly has a material impact on daily life, I would say the addition of Trader Joe's is so much more relevant by a factor of 100 than the prospective addition of 2 apartment buildings at the end of Atlantic Avenue.
1 minute.